Welcome back to Law and Crime. My name is Bob Bianchi. There's a lot going on here today. This is really unbelievable. Alec Murdaugh's defense team is demanding a new trial for the murder of his wife, Maggie, and son, Paul. Now, I first heard this and I was like, it's going to be a whole cup of nothing as far as I was concerned. However, the defense claims that the elected clerk of the courts tampered with the jury. That is not a good statement to hear if you're a prosecutor. Murdaugh was sentenced to life in prison back in March for the death of his wife and his son. Murdaugh's attorneys, Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin, will be hosting a press conference today as they file a motion requesting a whole new trial in the case. In part, their statement reads, "Today we filed a petition based upon newly discovered evidence with the Supreme Court of Appeals, South Carolina Court of Appeals, to say Alec Murdaugh appeal while a hearing, is held on a motion for a new trial." These are serious allegations that are filed in this petition, and they themselves could explain a number of peculiarities that occurred in the 6-week trial. And they ask that we request SLED stand down on initiating any investigation of these allegations since they are heavily invested maintaining Alex's conviction. Alec Murdaugh maintained and still maintains his innocence of the murder and malice of Maggie, and Paul, and he believes the truth will ultimately prevail. I'm so excited. It's just too much for me to be able to deal with. This is really serious, folks, because what we're saying here, and I'm reading the paperwork, and we have some great guests that are going to join us right now, is that this clerk did some extremely and extraordinarily bad things that in my mind could very well necessitate a reversal of the conviction. And not only did they in their moving papers write these things, they brought some receipts with regard to affidavits from some of the jurors. So, I mean, if these things pan out to be true at a factual hearing, this prosecution's conviction is in jeopardy. Joining me to discuss the news is criminal defense attorney Chris Adams, along with law and crime correspondents Anjanette Levy and Gigi McKelvey. Thank you guys for joining me. I'll start with you. Okay, I'll start with you, Anjanette. What can you tell us?
I love Gigi.
Like incredible motion, and were you struck as I was that they actually have affidavits from jurors here?
Hi, Bob. This is the motion. I've been trying to get through the entire thing. It's 65 pages. It includes statements by the defense, also includes affidavits, and some really startling claims. I am not that surprised, though. I will tell you that, because we saw a lot during that trial. It went for 6 weeks. We heard some things during the trial that could corroborate some of this. And when I say I heard, we were there. We were talking to everybody. It's a small town. People talk. And so I am not that surprised. I'm certainly not surprised that the defense interviewed these jurors, especially the one we called Egg Lady, who was removed from the jury at the very last minute, because we knew that the defense was really unhappy with that decision. They liked Egg Lady and they thought she was on their side. And that whole thing was very peculiar when it came up. So in this motion, the defense is asserting that Becky Hill, somebody that we dealt with a lot during the trial, that she made up this claim that there was a Facebook post claiming that Egg Lady had said some things about the case and that she believed Alec Murdaugh was innocent. Egg Lady is now saying that that never happened, that Becky Hill made it up. So there's a lot in here. And if this is true, a new trial could possibly be ordered and may very well be ordered.
Yeah, I want to, I can just tell you as a trial lawyer, how anything that involves interference with a jury's deliberation is a massive problem, and voir dire has to occur. Gigi, we have affidavits that were submitted by jurors here, and again, it's evidence to a certain extent. It hasn't been completely fleshed out, but this court clerk, Rebecca Hill is her name, they argue in these paperwork was telling jurors don't be fooled by the evidence that's being presented by Murdaugh's attorneys. She directly asked me if I was inclined to vote guilty or not guilty before the deliberations occurred. I told her I had not made up my mind and that I want to hear all the evidence before deciding. This is unbelievable pressure. In other parts, she asked if we thought that he was innocent, that basically indicating to them that she did not feel that they were innocent, not to be fooled by Murdaugh and the way he testifies. I mean, and then There's allegations in multiple documents here that she was going into the jury room or the jury area where the jurors were and peeling off a foreperson of the jury and going into multiple conversations for 5 or 10 minutes and telling them the foreperson not to discuss what they're discussing to the other jurors. And on the Facebook piece, I'm sorry to go on with this, but on the Facebook piece that Anjanette just talked about, the judge had indicated when the same court clerk got involved in investigating that he had wished she had come to him as opposed to trying to handle it on her own. I mean, that's one thing. But if these statements are true at all, that she was in some way, shape, or form, wink, nod, verbal or otherwise, telling jurors her viewpoint as to how they should rule, I can't see, in the interest of justice, how this does not only get vacated, this conviction ASAP, but that this court clerk, if true, would not be charged with a crime.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge situation. And I really got concerned after I read the affidavits, because that's at the very end of this filing. And it all sort of follows the same pattern of what they are alleging happened. So having, as you said, they came with receipts. I had texted Anjanette to ask if they had put these jurors under oath about this, and I hadn't gotten to the end yet. So when I saw those, I thought, oh man, this is a big deal. I mean, this is the biggest trial this state has ever seen. And to potentially have this conviction tossed out and do a new trial, it's going to be chaos.
Yeah, I mean, Anjanette, we try to extend the benefit of the break for the stupidity of human beings, okay, all the time. But this is a court clerk that is trained and sworn to ensure that the jury is fair and impartial and that no one intercedes in the deliberative process. And if that happens, they're to immediately report it to a judge. That's their oath. In this moving papers, in the affidavit, we got piles of papers all over here. I thought it was a big nothing burger until I read this and my jaw hit the ground. Not only was she basically telegraphing to them not to believe Murdaugh, that it's all a trick, the defense is doing a trick, watch him on the stand, there's evidence you don't know about. These are some of the allegations that are in here. But in paragraph 11 of the moving papers of the defendant, it said, Ms. Hill, the clerk, then asked about the views of the rest of the jury. She told me, if this is a juror saying this, if the foreperson would just go in and ask for a raise of hands, that it would be done and over with. She said everyone needs to be on the same page. She then again said she would reinstate a restraining order, and we go on about that. So not only is she giving her viewpoint about the guilt of the defendant, she's actually telling them how to go about it in the deliberative process in order to get there sooner than later. And let's not forget, Anjanette, and maybe you could talk on this, the allegation here is that she didn't want a hung jury. That's why she was trying to figure it out, because she had a book deal and wanted to do speaking engagements. Wow, Anjanette.
And she did release a book recently, just in the last several weeks. So, and she's been on, she was on the new Fox Nation documentary. I saw her interviewed on that over the weekend. So there's a lot going on here. And if every word of this is true, this is very serious. It's egregious behavior. And I must say, Bob, that during the trial, around the time of closing arguments, we were nearing the end of the trial. We had kind of heard, or I had heard really, a rumor that she was talking possibly to the foreperson, and I was not able to verify that rumor. However, it appears from this paperwork that was very likely true. Yes, it's a small town, but that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter if you pass this person in the hall. You shouldn't be asking her anything except, hey, do you need a bottle of water? Can we get you anything? Do you guys need anything in there? Nobody should really be having any contact with the jurors other than the bailiff or whomever is charged with, making sure they get from the courtroom to the jury room and then back to their cars at the end of the day. It's stunning.
Yeah, Gigi, let me go through a couple of more things here. And again, you can write all you want in this big fat piece of paper that we have here about the brief, but I segmented the evidence, the actual affidavits that these jurors had submitted. And I just want our audience to listen to some of this, because I mean, if you can see here, I got things circled all over the place. I'm in complete disbelief from what I'm reading here. The court clerk supposedly told the juror not to be fooled by the evidence presented by Murdaugh's attorneys. Told them not to be fooled by the evidence presented by Murdaugh's attorneys, which I understand to mean that Murdaugh would lie when he testified. End of story. Lights out. If the judge believes that happened, Murdaugh's right to a due process has been violated, and it is a sickening and disgusting thing. As a prosecutor, I've been in this position. I've been in a position where not like with a court clerk, that's unfathomable to me, where there was some allegation of juror tampering, whatever. You have no idea, ladies and gentlemen, how much effort and time and sleepless nights and not eating or overeating and not being with your family that prosecutors in particular and defense attorneys too spend on a case like this in order to ensure that there's a fair trial. And you want to make sure that the finger is not put on the scale by anybody. And as a prosecutor, I can tell you in particular, you don't want to put a victim's family through it, your witnesses through a second trial for something you had absolutely no control over, i.e. somebody tampering with a juror. And guys, Gigi in particular, the court clerk is alleged to have said in this affidavit, watch him, referring Murdaugh, closely, which I understood to mean he was guilty. I mean, this is just unbelievable. Immediately testified, let's go further. She told the jury, we cannot interact with Mr. Murdaugh because that is what the defense wants us to do. Basically saying the verdict shouldn't take you too long. I'm just going through some of these other ones. You're going to, right before the defense put up the case, Ms. Hill told jurors, y'all are going to hear things that will throw you off. Don't let this distract or mislead you. I am so outraged by this. If these allegations are true, I don't even know what to say other than if the judge does his voir dire and does his interrogation, which he did with the Facebook issue with regard to her, and she did a humming, and that turned out to be all false, all falsely created, but it got a juror thrown off the case. I got to tell you what, if I were representing Ms. Hill, I'd tell her to take the fifth before she spoke to the judge.
Yeah, I think she's definitely probably not feeling so hot right now. I think that these receipts, I mean, I really thought like you, this was going to be a nothing burger, that this was just throw something against the wall. Let's see if it sticks. We know that the defense was not happy. She wrote the book and went on the press tour shortly after. I interviewed her on my podcast. I know you guys interviewed her. And so I just don't know where this is going to go. But like you, I do think that this could end up in a brand new trial for him. And we got to do this again. It was 6 weeks in Walterboro. My question is, at this point, do you move it out of Walterboro? And is there going to be another judge presiding, since Judge Newman has subsequently given interviews on air since the verdict? This could be a big logistical nightmare for a million reasons. Yeah, well, this lady may have been doing this for her own personal self-gain. We'll see with the facts. It's only an allegation right now. We don't know. Or she may have been doing it because she was on top on the USA, pro-police, pro-prosecution. And if that's true, she has no idea the stakes she put through the prosecutors' hearts right now, who are sitting there in disbelief that all their effort, all their time. I mean, I don't even know what the prosecutors are going to say here, because usually you'd say, well, whatever taint happened with the jury, it would not have affected the outcome of the case. I have never, in over 30 years of a career, seen anything as complicitous and duplicitous as this. And I am sure the prosecutors' hearts are.
You want an investment opportunity as diverse as the economy of Texas. Why not invest?
Oh, looks like they're taking a tiny break. Hi, Chrissy. How are you? I'm sick. I'm back here trying to look nice. I'll be on camera shortly. Yeah, wouldn't that be something? If he got a new trial. This is crazy. I'm going to put a little music on. And I have to take one of my daughters over to... work shortly. So yeah, sounds like they've got some jury tamperage going on. And even this guy said, 30 years of covering court cases, and this is the first time he's seen something so horrible. And if you were with me, I'm not sure, Chrissy, did I... Things where the daughter's over... Guy buys rigging against him from the very... He did not get... No! Chrissy, did I meet you during Murdaugh? No, I think I met you right after that. One of the ones that Dylan... My triplet daughter started high school today, started senior year of high school. I can't believe it. I had a feeling the trial was rigged from the beginning. Okay, I started watching Murdaugh with Emily D. Baker, and I love her, but her chat, there was like 70,000 people in the chat, so I can't handle that. And then I ended up finding the DUI guy, Larry, and watched the end of the trial with him. And I've said all along, for starters, I've never fought so hard for a Democrat in my whole entire life. For starters. Number two, the jury came back. Well, number two, the jury came back in 3 hours. Wasn't it 3 hours? And it's like an hour and a half for paperwork. But another point I had was Judge Newman's son had died right before that trial started. So I would think he would have had to recuse himself because, he lost a son. I don't know if it was a car accident or disease or what happened. But you would think, that would affect him enough where could he be unbiased? I mean, remember the tongue lashing he gave Alex after the jury came back? Number 4, well, I've lost count. But another thing is I had said the whole entire time that the charges were for first-degree premeditated murder. And what did they get him on? I mean, what put the gun in his hands? His son's head exploded, yet they found nothing. Not a drop in his truck, not a drop anywhere. He had a little bit on himself, probably from checking. Well, no, actually, didn't the t-shirt say that that Maggie's blood was on his t-shirt, but then when the lady testified, there was nothing on his t-shirt? I mean, you could see in the video his t-shirt was like a little sweaty. I don't think he murdered him. I don't think he murdered them, but I think Maggie and Paul were murdered either because of his drug afflictions or drug things.
I am really awestruck, jaw dropping.
Well, anyway, I'm going to mute myself. I'll be on camera shortly, people.
Quite like this. In case you're just joining us, the defense team for Alex Murdaugh is asking for a new trial for their client who's currently serving a life sentence for killing his wife and son. Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin claim that evidence has come to light since their client's conviction and are requesting a whole new trial. There'll be a press conference regarding this motion at, I believe, around 2:30. Now, like we've been saying, you've been watching the previous segments when I first heard this, and the producer said, you may have to talk about this. And I said, big zero, motion for a new trial, newly discovered evidence. Been there, done that, happens every day. Then I got the moving papers, read the brief, and then the attached receipts, the affidavits from these jurors. I was blown away. Prediction, this case is being reversed, and the court clerk in that particular courtroom better not be talking to anybody. If I were her lawyer, I'd be telling her to exercise her right to remain silent. Law and crime correspondent Anjanette Levy is here with me right now. And while we wait for the press conference to begin, she has some of the defense motion with her to read for us. Anjanette, I mean, are you wowed like me here or what? Is it just me? I can't believe it.
Well, the extent of the allegations is somewhat surprising, Bob, but I'm not completely surprised by this because we had heard some rumblings, and Egg Lady, as I mentioned, the one juror that we believed would be, seemed to believe Alec Murdaugh, she was removed from the jury, and it was pretty controversial. It came at the end of the trial, and we had heard some rumblings about whether or not all of this was true, about her discussing the case with her ex-husband or what have you. So I am going through it, and I'm reading the affidavit of one of the jurors. I'm not going to put her name out there, but she said several times during the trial, Ms. Hill told the jurors that the media would want to interview jurors at the end of the trial. And during one of these conversations, she passed out business cards from the media to jurors. At the end of the trial, Ms. Hill told, redacted name, that no one from the media wanted to interview her. Right before the defense put up their case, this is the next bullet point, Ms. Hill told the jurors, quote, "Y'all are going to hear things that will throw y'all off. Don't let this distract you or mislead you." Number 7, this next point. After Alex testified, 8 jurors indicated they did not believe his testimony. Point number 8, redacted name recalled that redacted name, juror 544, known as Boston by many of the jurors, was very emotional during the trial. Number 9, during the visit to Moselle, redacted name, juror 826 and redacted name walked to the scene together. Then juror 826 began walking with the clerk of court, Becky Hill. There were times the jurors were not kept together, but were in 2 separate rooms. Redacted name noticed that jurors talking about the case before deliberations began. Neither she nor redacted name, juror number 785, joined in on the conversations about Alec. As the jury was deliberating, she believes Judge Newman came to the room she was in and told her the jury would have to spend the night at a hotel if they did not have a vote by a certain time, but she does not recall the time or the deadline. Redacted name, juror number 741, was the first former juror to provide information that the clerk of court made statements to members of the jury about the evidence presented during the trial prior to the jury deliberations. Ms. Hill's conduct was corroborated by other jurors during subsequent interviews. And I must say, earlier on in this affidavit, Bob, it says that during the trial, she witnessed clerk of court Becky Hill come to the jury room, and Ms. Hill and the 4-person, juror number 826, whose name is redacted, went into the bathroom. After Ms. Hill and the 4-person exited the bathroom, Ms. Hill told the jurors they could not ask the 4-person questions. There's also an allegation being made in here, Bob, that somehow Becky Hill selected the 4-person of the jury, or at least recommended that the 4-person who recommended the judge pick a certain juror as a 4-person. So I know specifically, I can see her in my mind right now, the 4-person on the jury. She was not the original 4-person, if memory serves me correctly. And we had a number of jurors dropped or replaced during this trial. So these are very, very serious allegations. And Becky Hill may be required, there may be an evidentiary hearing about this, and she may be required to testify. And as you said earlier, she may invoke her Fifth Amendment right.
Well, I'm telling her she came to the law firm of the Bianchi Law Group. That's exactly what we'd be saying. We have Chris Adams with us, criminal defense lawyer. Chris, in addition to that excellent presentation that you just heard, I'm going to paragraph 10. Now, this Facebook thing, we're going to have to drill down a little bit more. Maybe you can explain the ins and outs about how that got that 4-person essentially thrown off the jury, and it turned out to be a fraud about her ex-husband who she hadn't seen in 10 years, blah, blah, blah. We can go through all that. But in one of the affidavits, it's alleged that she, Chris, that she was going into the jury room. She was having private conversations with people. She was influencing them with regard to basically Murdaugh's a liar, don't believe his defense attorneys. But paragraph 10 of one of the affidavits indicates Ms. Hill then asked me questions about my opinion regarding Murdaugh's guilt. Chris, you're a great trial lawyer. Can you even believe that I'm reading these words, if they're even true? Prior to they're asking whether or not the opinion of the juror on Murdaugh's guilt. She asked if I was leaning one way or the other. Come on. I told her Creighton Waters' closing was good, but I still had questions. She asked me what kind of questions, and I replied, questions about the guns. She asked me what would make me think he's innocent. I asked, there was no murder weapon found. She then asked, well, what makes you think he's guilty? I said, Paul's video. It just is an extensive discussion of the facts. She then stated everything Murdaugh said has been lies and that I should, quote, forget the guns. They will never be seen again. Chris, are you in complete shock like I am? It's almost impossible to believe it, except you have these affidavits coming from multiple jurors that are all essentially corroborating this.
If the allegations are true, it is outrageous conduct that should require a new trial. This kind of stuff just can't be allowed in courts, big trials or small trials. And we know that there's some informality in some smaller courthouses or maybe informality in some chambers, but this is so far beyond that. This is a clerk of court. If these allegations are true, it's a clerk of court coaching the jurors to return a guilty verdict, which we just can't allow that.
Yeah. Wow. I got to tell you, Chris, I was saying before, I think the prosecutors are devastated by this. When I've had any kind of issues with juror involvement, which don't even approach anything like this, you have a voir dire.
Wait a minute, where are they facing? So like this? Okay. Is that good?
All right.
Okay, so.
Push the button here.
Yeah, button. What?
Push the button.
Yes. So I'm going to read a statement. Jim Griffin will have a couple words to say, and then we'll answer questions. Today, Jim Griffin and I filed a petition based on newly discovered evidence with the South Carolina Court of Appeals to stay Alec Murdaugh's appeal while a hearing is held on a motion for a new trial. Concurrently, we've sent a request to the South Carolina U.S. Attorney to open a federal investigation into the violation of Alec Murdaugh's civil rights. The allegations in the petition filed today speak for themselves, but we believe they explain a number of peculiarities in the 6-week trial. We request that SWED stand down on initiating any investigation of these allegations since they are heavily invested in maintaining Alec's convictions. We suggest they wait for the Court of Appeals to rule and receive direction from the trial court. If the Court of Appeals remands the case for an evidentiary hearing, if the Court of Appeals remands the case for an evidentiary hearing, we would also request that those in the media and the public respect the privacy of those included in this filing. Jim and I want to thank those on our team who stand behind us and have worked tirelessly to ferret out the truth. Alec Murdaugh maintained and still maintains his innocence in the murder of Maggie and Paul and believes the truth will ultimately prevail. Jim?
The right to a jury trial, is a fundamental principle of our justice system. Jurors must be free from outside influences and must decide the case solely on the evidence presented in the courtroom, subject to the rules of evidence, subject to the rules of the court, and most importantly, subject to the crucible of cross-examination that's guaranteed by the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution, and that is the right to confront witnesses. When jurors receive private communications outside the confines of a public courtroom, the Sixth Amendment is violated and numerous other constitutional rights are violated. And that's not Jim Griffin on the law, that is the law of the land. And I want to quote from a decision from the South Carolina Court of Appeals, which is behind me, and states this: where there is a private communication of a court official to members of the jury, an occurrence which cannot be tolerated if the sanctity of the jury system is to be maintained, a new trial must be granted unless it clearly appears that the subject matter of the communication was harmless and could not have affected the verdict. What we had filed today, supported by sworn testimony of jurors, is that the clerk of court had improper private communications with the jurors, and the subject matter of those communications was the credibility of the defense that the Murdaugh legal defense team put up, and it was the believability of the defendant's own testimony. Now, there's been a lot have said, talked about whether Alex should have taken the stand. I can assure you, when we considered what factors and what we should and should not do and considered whether he should take the stand, we never considered the likelihood, as reported to us by the jurors, that the clerk of court would go in to the sanctity of the jury room before he testified and tell the jurors, don't be fooled by his testimony, watch out for his body language. And that is what the sworn testimony that we have filed in court today says. And if that is true, which we have every reason to believe that it is, and no reason to believe that it's not, there's no choice but the courts to grant a new trial.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Okay.
When the fourth person was pulled away at those zealots, did you guys see that, or did you find out after the fact?
Well, I think we observed it. We did. No, I was there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. I was there. I watched it, but I mean, look, we were not looking to impute any nefarious conduct, but clearly, what the jurors reported to us, that they were off talking, the forelady and the clerk. I saw them together, but I wasn't watching. I believe. Look, I've been doing this almost 50 years. The bedrock of any trial, and I've done hundreds of them, is that the clerk of court is the person that makes sure the jury gets their food. If they're put up for the night, someplace to stay, their travel accommodations are met. They're not someone that ever should talk to them about the case. I've never had it happen. Again, I've been doing this for a very long time. Never heard of it happening until this case.
And one thing we want everyone to understand, that the clerk of court is an elected official by the people, not appointed by the judge, not appointed by the judiciary. It's a public official who's elected and is an independent state actor. And so that what we're complaining about in the motion that we filed today is the conduct of an elected official, not conduct by Judge Newman or anybody in the unified court system.
And I think it's important also to understand that she is a state actor, and that's why we forwarded today a letter to the U.S. Attorney asking them to open an investigation into the violation of Alec Murdaugh's civil rights by a state actor under color of state law.
I believe you guys had 4 jurors that you had affidavits for in the paperwork you filed. Did they reach out to you, or did you guys reach out to them?
Well, this is an interesting story. Let Jim tell you.
So immediately in the aftermath of the verdict, we had received information that we needed to look into what happened in the jury room. We started down that road and we met a zone of silence. No jurors would speak to us. And so we were, what I like to call, we were given the Heisman, right? And then when the clerk of court wrote her book, published her book, that zone of silence collapsed. And jurors were upset about that, the ones we talked with, and they were more than willing to come forward and tell us the things that we had sort of heard through a whisper campaign. But, and so as a result of that, we were able to interview some jurors. Now, there's still a number of jurors who maintain that zone of silence, who have not talked to us. We did try to reach out to most all of them that we could get in touch with, but we, the information we got, I can tell you, was independent of each juror. The first juror we talked to, we got information about Ms. Hill saying, don't be fooled. And then the second juror, independent of the first juror, says the same thing. And the third juror, independent of the other two, say the same thing. And so we're very confident that the information is accurate.
Well,
and timeline.
What
ruling will be, how fast you want?
Ask them. I mean, we don't have any control over that. We just did receive a notice from the Court of Appeals that the Attorney General has 10 days to respond to our motion. Okay. Now, I think what's interesting to me, again, having done this for so long, is that once we had that initial contact with that first juror, we began going around. We had a list and knocking on, literally on Sundays, knocking on jurors' doors, asking them to speak with us. Some of them wouldn't come out. Some of us told us never to come back. But some did, and some talked to us. I'll give you an example. And one of the things we heard was, once the jury went out, even though there were 6 smokers and they were given smoke breaks during the entire trial, once the jury went out, they were told no more smoke breaks. No, you're not, you people that want nicotine, you're going to have to get a verdict first. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. Now that indicates something, and the court would be the one to communicate that. Why? So a bunch of folks told us stuff that appeared to be inconsequential, but in the total context indicated to us that what we've put in this petition about the court is credible, and based on sworn testimony from 2 jurors, and we interviewed a third. My paralegal, Holly Miller, has given you an affidavit or filed an affidavit on what she told us. A lot of these folks just don't want to get involved, but they're going to be involved if we get a hearing, because each and every one of them is going to have to testify in an open court before you as to what happened and what didn't happen. Wait, one at a time. Who?
It would appear that Judge Newman was at least aware of some of the allegations that you talked about in your motion. For example, the Facebook post with juror 785, and the judge actually said, "Oh boy, I'm not too pleased about the clerk interrogating a juror as opposed to coming to me and happening to you."
And that's a good point. There's no suggestion that the judge did anything untoward. But what that does do, if it comes back, he may end up being a witness. So, I mean, but until the Court of Appeals acts, that issue does not have to be dealt with.
But if the fact is that the court was aware of some of these issues but still didn't intervene, how concerned are you?
We don't know. We don't know that he didn't intervene. That's why I'm saying he's a witness. We need to know.
That this evidence is strong enough such that it could have changed the verdict had it been introduced in trial.
You know, that's not the legal test. The legal test is the subject matter prejudicial to the defense. It's not would it have made a difference in the outcome. Was the subject matter of the improper private conversation material to the defense? If it's immaterial, like what do you want to have for dinner? Do you want to take a smoke break? Do you want to go home? Those are immaterial matters. But when the subject matter is reported under oath by these jurors, it was a direction on how you should receive Alec Murdaugh's testimony. You should look at him. Don't be fooled by him. That subject matter is absolutely material. That's the core of our defense. And that is something that we had no chance to defend against. And so we strongly believe if that evidence is accurate, and the law will require a new trial.
If this is all true, do you think the clerk should be criminally charged?
When was the last
No
time you
comment.
spoke with your client, and what has he shared with you with his latest motion?
Well, I can't talk about attorney-client privilege information. I can tell you that when I shared with him the affidavits, he's a lawyer. He was astonished. He was shaking. He was in disbelief, and he thanked Mr. Harpootlian, Mr. Barber, and myself for spending our weekends on dirt roads in Colleton County.
And by the way, we've seen more of Colleton County on dirt roads, in places we're city boys. We didn't believe existed in this state, looking for folks that would talk to us. A lot of doors slammed in our face. A lot of doors slammed in our faces.
Do you think Ms. Hill should still have her job?
I'm sorry?
Do you think Ms. Hill should still have her job?
No comment. I'm sorry, what?
The Facebook posting from the ex-husband of the dismissed juror. There's a lot of detail in there about that. And there's some in-camera transcripts there as well. Was this not something that happened very quickly? The fact that you guys are alleging it didn't exist at all and perhaps was conspired to be created to get this juror dismissed?
Yes.
That's a very serious allegation.
It's all serious. Everything we've alleged, everything in those affidavits is serious. This is a very serious matter. And again,
So what you see in the sworn testimony that's been filed today is Ms. Hill told the court that there was a Facebook post by this juror's ex-husband. The ex-husband has filed an affidavit saying, "I've never posted a Facebook post." Ms. Hill in her office says he must have deleted it. We can't find it. But they produced a Facebook post from someone with the same name apologizing for an earlier Facebook post and that Satan made him do it and et cetera, et cetera. And Ms. Hill related that as being this juror's ex-husband. Ms. Hill had this juror's ex-husband's photograph. You can match them up. They don't match. And what we do know, and we laid it out in detail in our brief, is that the apology Facebook post was posted, I think, on February 16th, and said we had deleted it the day before, February 15th. Ms. Hill is telling Judge Newman on February 23rd that I just saw this Facebook post. Impossible. Impossible. We also have in there sworn testimony that Ms. Hill told this juror that SLED went out and confirmed with your ex-husband that he posted that. Not true, according to the sworn testimony.
And Phil Barber and I and Howie Miller from my office went down and interviewed the ex-husband, and he allowed us to, I wouldn't know how to do it, but Phil did, to download his entire Facebook history. None of that is in there. So, I mean, again, we've done what we can do. We're not the police. You know, we have no way to compel anybody to talk to us or give us anything. We've asked very nicely. Now, I will say this. The two jurors that gave affidavits have an attorney, Joe McCullough, who was skulking around here a moment ago back there. So if you want to know about those two jurors, you may want to have a chat with him.
What's the motivation of the jurors?
Wait, what?
What's the motivation, do you think, of the jurors talking to? Are they upset with the clerk?
I think they were upset with the way things went, and the clerk, I think they may very well, yes, they're upset with the clerk. They're upset with the way this played out.
Are they regretting their vote?
Can't comment on that.
The Facebook post, the person who posted the original post, have you ever gotten an opportunity to speak with them? And if so,
No. I mean, the original post, we don't know whether it ever existed.
But the apology post, did you speak with him, Phil?
No, we did not speak.
Do you have a timeline from the FBI regarding your request for a new investigation?
Well, as you know, having talked to the FBI before, no. They're not going to tell us anything.
In your letter to the U.S. Attorney, you mentioned the importance of having the FBI investigate as opposed to SLED, for example. Can you talk about the importance of having the FBI involved?
Well, having anybody but SLED investigate it. SLED is very invested in this conviction. How invested? Well, the agent, David Owens, that testified under cross-examination by Jim, admitted two things. One, he perjured himself in front of the grand jury. And two, he fabricated evidence. SLED made him this year's Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. So is that the agency that ought to be going to jurors? I don't think so. I think that the court, if this is remanded back, the trial court should pick somebody else. If the FBI is not doing it, then there's the sheriff's departments, there are other folks, not Carleton County, but other sheriff's departments that could go out and interview jurors or bring them to court. I mean, all these jurors are going to end up testifying anyway. There may not be any reason to go out and interview them. They may just put a subpoena on them, bring them to court.
how would the jury feel if these jurors testify under oath in a place where, like you say, through the zone of silence when they have to talk about?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that would happen if we get the hearing that we've requested. That's why we've requested the hearing, so that we can get subpoena power, and we can get some subpoena, not just individuals come to court, jurors come to court, witnesses come to court, but subpoena records, phone records, for example, emails, for example. I mean, so with a hearing, we have a broad array of assets at our disposal to bring evidence to court. Right now, we've got nothing except Dick's Mercedes and dirt roads in Carleton County.
Have you ever had any jurors who refute what the other jurors are saying?
No, we've not had any juror.
That was uncalled for.
Anything
Elite Mercedes and the poor people that live on dirt
What you
roads.
saw in some of the affidavits is the jurors were separated in two rooms and sort of broke up from, guys in one room, gals in another room. I don't know if that was appropriate. Men in one room, females in another room. And so the comments that we've gotten on the sworn affidavits come from the ladies' room, if you will, more so than the men's room. But we do have information that we submitted from one juror where he does acknowledge that she talked to him about evidence, about autopsy photos, and don't be upset about them. I mean, that should not be happening. That should not be happening. And this juror is a smoker, and he relayed to us basically the coercive effect of people who have a nicotine habit not able to smoke
Until they reach the verdict.
until they reach a verdict. And so that's what we got.
Wait a second. Yeah.
An issue with the cable. Could you read that? There is a judicial motion real fast for that issue.
Do what now?
The motion you read, can you read that? very first thing? I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I'll read it for you after we get done with this, but I don't think I ought to keep all these folks doing that.
Or would you request a change of venue?
Well, you gotta get a new trial before you get there, and that's not something we're gonna talk about today. And yes, ma'am.
The activities that the jurors have given the affidavits for, was that behavior that you believe Ms. Hill was exhibiting to all 12 at one time?
We don't.
Or were they singled out or segregated?
Well, we know some of the statements were made in front of the jurors in the one jury room. Now, understand I think there are only 6 jurors in that room, or maybe 8. I'm not sure, but not all the jurors would have been present for all the statements. Clearly, they were given in one room or the other.
And just to be clear, the catalyst for like reinvestigating this was the publication of the book.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Go ahead.
So we didn't stop investigating, but we were hitting brick walls until her book came out, and then jurors who obviously were not comfortable with how she handled matters were even less comfortable with her going on a book tour and making money off what she did. That's what was reported to us.
Now, she has said her book is self-published. That really doesn't sound like somebody who's getting a lot of money. What do you say to that if somebody says, well, she just self-published?
Well, she's trying to make a lot of money. That's the point. I mean, she's trying to make money off of it. She's selling the book. I mean, the question is, was it a successful scheme? I don't know. I mean, if you've read it, I'm not going to give a book review here, but I don't know that you buy the book. I mean, it's not well written. The story she tells is not accurate, in our opinion, at least the facts as we saw them.
What did you think about the passage of her book that describes going to Moselle with jurors?
Well, you know, the problem I have with what she says in there is, after going to Moselle, we, if you notice, she used the plural we, felt such and such and such and such. Is that the jurors and her? I mean, I think that's great cross-examination for her when she testifies in this matter before the trial judge, if the Court of Appeals sends it back.
Do you want any hearing in this matter to be public?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Want all y'all there. We miss you. Any other questions?
Yeah, you said you're investigating. So along your investigations into the alleged jury misconduct and these allegations, have you uncovered any additional things that you would present in a second trial for your defense?
Let's not talk about that.
Yeah, no. If we are lucky enough to get a second trial, you have to wait and see. You know, we're not going to disclose any of that today.
What is your optimism for getting?
No, 2 Crime Spies to
I am
rewind that part and
very
see if I can hear what they asked.
Ultimately, we will get a new trial. How long that'll take, I don't know.
Have you tried to reach Clerk Hill, ask her any questions about any of this?
We've not reached out to Clark Hill. We had reached out to some other folks, and based on the information we received, we thought it would be pointless to reach out to her.
Do you have any alternate suspect or suspects?
What now?
Do you have any alternate suspects or suspects in the case?
We're focused on getting him a new trial. That's what we've been working on. Anything else? No? Thank you so much. Let me read this statement to him real quick.
If anybody is watching, could you let me know if, well, I haven't had a chance to check Twitter yet, but let me know if you found those documents. It's 60 some pages. I want to read it. Let's just hang tight here with this live stream coming from Law and Crime. See that pastor back there with the scarf around him? He was at the trial outside. Larry, the DUI guy. Okay, so I was saying I started watching the trial with Emily D. Baker, and I really liked her. The one thing that, and if Emily D. Baker is watching my channel, this is not meant as a dig, but she's a former prosecuting attorney in California, And I thought her bias to Alex, she was like, oh, please, no one believes you. And I thought that was a little uncalled for. Whereas like Peter Tragos of Tragos Law, the lawyer, you know, he seems to just kind of stay in the middle. But like I said, also the chat was like flying by, and it's just too hard to interact with people. So maybe I shouldn't have said that, but that's what I think. Then I found Larry, the DUI guy, and I watched the rest of the trial with him. He was actually there. And actually, if you watch the Depp v. Heard Netflix documentary series, Larry's right in the very beginning. He was there too for that one. Anyway, so Larry actually interviewed this guy in the back with the you know, pastor outfit on, Murdaugh guilty. And I had said at first, I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. They were praying for justice and whatever. But then kind of later, I'm like, has anybody checked his credentials? Like, is he an actual pastor? I mean, to me, he looks kind of like an actor. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that either. So if you're watching on Rumble, I'm sorry, but for some weird reason, Hi, Bad Grandpa. Welcome back. I had like 5 hours of sleep after trying to catch that fugitive. I haven't even had a chance to see if he's caught yet. Okay, so now they're replaying a little tiny bit of it. Let me just be quiet 1 minute.
Impossible. We also have in there sworn testimony that Ms. Hill told this juror that SLED went out and confirmed with your ex-husband that he posted that. Not true, according to the sworn testimony.
And Phil Barber and I and Howie Miller from my office went down and interviewed the ex-husband, and he allowed us to, I wouldn't know how to do it, but Phil did, to download his entire Facebook history. None of that is in there. So, I mean, again, we've done what we can do. We're not the police. You know, we have no way to compel anybody to talk to us or give us anything. We've asked very nicely. Now, I will say this. The two jurors that gave affidavits have an attorney, Joe McCullough, who was skulking around here a moment ago back there. So if you want to know about those two jurors, you may want to have a chat with him.
What's the motivation of the jurors talking to you?
Wait, what?
What's the motivation, do you think, of the jurors talking to you? Are they upset with the clerk?
I think they were upset with the way things went. And the clerk, I think they may very well, yes, they're upset with the clerk. They're upset with the way this played out.
Are they regretting their vote?
Can't comment on that.
In the Facebook post, the person who posted the original post, have you ever gotten an opportunity to speak with them? And if so,
No. I mean, the original post, we don't know whether it ever existed.
But the apology post, did you speak with him, Phil?
No, we did not speak.
Do you have a timeline from the FBI regarding your request for a new investigation?
Well, as you know, having talked to the FBI before, no. They're not going to tell us anything.
In your letter to the U.S. Attorney, you mentioned the importance
Says that this is just them replaying some of the question answer part. I'm just going to be quiet through it because I want to.
SLED is very invested in this conviction. How invested? Well, the agent, David Owens, that testified under cross-examination by Jim, admitted two things. One, he perjured himself in front of the grand jury. And two, he fabricated evidence. SLED made him this year's Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. So is that the agency that ought to be going to jurors? I don't think so. I think
that Mark Tinsley, he had a turn sideways the side of Texas during this whole thing. He was the guy that represented Mallory Beach's family.
There are other folk, not Carlton County, but other sheriff's departments that could go out and interview jurors or bring them to court. I mean, all these jurors are going to end up testifying anyway. There may not be any reason to go out and interview them. They may just put a subpoena on them, bring them to court.
how important is it for y'all if jurors testify under oath in a place where, like you say, there's a zone of silence when they have to talk to y'all?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that would happen if we get the hearing that we've requested. That's why we've requested the hearing, so that we can get subpoena power and we can get some subpoena, not just individuals come to court, jurors come to court, witnesses come to court, but
yeah, did you hear him say that the whole thing? So the egg lady,
emails, for example. I mean, so
she got kicked off because there was an allegation that her husband got drunk and posted something on Facebook about his wife being on the jury, and then the egg lady got kicked off. Turns out that was fabricated.
No, we've not had any jurors.
According to this document, which I'm trying to find. So if you happen to know where it is,
Jen, what you saw
Yeah.
in some of the affidavits is
They lied under
jurors were
oath. So many grounds
separated
for a retrial.
in
The
two
judge was,
rooms, and
yeah, the
they
judge.
broke up from
He was biased.
guys in
Remember how
one
he gave
room, gals
Alex
in
that
another
tongue
room,
lashing at the
that were
end,
men in one room, females in
saying,
another room.
you know, your
And
grandfather's
so
portrait and
the
your great
comments that
grandfather's portrait have
we've
been
gotten
your father or whatever.
from
We're going to take them out of this
affidavits come from
courtroom.
the ladies' room, if you will, more so than the men's room. But we do have information. that
Plus,
we
on top of
submitted
it,
from
like I
one
said, his
juror
son had died
where he
right
does
before this
acknowledge that
happened.
she talked to
And
him
here
about
Alex is on trial
about
for murdering his
autopsy
son.
photos. Don't be
Not
upset
just
about them.
only
That
murdering
should not be
him,
happening.
blowing
That should not
his
be happening.
brains right out of his skull.
The juror's a smoker, and he relayed to us basically the coercive effect of people who have a nicotine habit not able to
Can you imagine people in the jury that are jonesing for some nicotine
so that's what we got.
being
Wait a sec, yeah.
denied that until they get a verdict, holding that over their head like an ultimatum? Bring back a jury verdict, and here you can have this nice Tolly outside. Idiots.
I mean, I'll read it for you after we
And
get
you
done
know,
with this, but
frankly,
I
to be
don't
honest,
think
I can't stand
we folks
Poot,
doing that.
and I can't stand Jim Griffin. Jim
Well,
Griffin is a
you gotta get new
Trump-hating
trial before you
asshole.
get there, and
I've
that's
gotten
not
into a
something we're
couple
gonna talk about
tussles with
today.
him on Twitter.
And-
He's a jackass.
Yes,
But that's what I wrestled with. This is supposed to be watching the facts, not, you know, they're Democrats, so he must be guilty. Can't stand Poot either. He's on the Democrat, South Carolina Democrat.
Well, we know some of the statements from
Congress.
in front of the jurors in the one jury room.
I think
Now,
he's a
understand
senator.
that's-
I'm not
there's
sure if
only
he's a
6 jurors
senator
in that
or a
room,
congressman.
or maybe 8. I'm not sure, but
Jim Griffin is just
not
an
all the
idiot,
jurors would have been present
asshole.
for all the statements.
With regards
Clearly,
to
they
Trump.
didn't
He's
get
got
one way or
TDS
the
so
other.
bad. There. Now you have my 2 cents. So this is just kind of replaying. And again, for those of you watching on Rumble, Rumble glitched out.
We didn't stop investigating.
I got one of those
we were getting
404,
calls
504, whatever
until the vote came out.
errors.
And
So I don't know if they're doing more
then
updates or
jurors
whatever.
who
So
obviously
as soon as it was able to
comfortable with
unglitch
how she
itself,
handled matters,
I went live. And
less
then what I'll
comfortable
do
with her
is
going on a
just
book tour and
download
making
the
money
full
off what
recording
she
off
did.
of YouTube
That's what was reported to us.
and upload it later in the whole thing. But at least you got the other half of the press conference. And then this is just like a
Well, she's
replay
trying
of
to make
parts.
a lot of money.
I'm assuming
That's the point. I mean, she's trying to make money off of it. She's selling the book. I mean, the question is, was it a successful scheme? I don't know. I mean,
Oh,
it wasn't giving
and-
credit. I'm not going to give a book review here, but I don't know that you buy the book.
One Bad Grandpa. I love
it's
Trump.
not
You know what?
Well written.
I still haven't gotten my
The
mugshot
story she tells
long
is
sleeve
not
white t-shirt.
accurate.
I hope it comes in the mail
in
soon.
our
I want to
opinion,
wear
at
it.
least the facts as we saw them.
What did you think about the passage of her book that describes going to Moselle with the jurors?
Well, you know, the problem I have with what she says in there is, after going to Moselle,
I wonder if I can find the
we,
book.
if you notice, she used the plural we felt such and such and such and such.
That would be
Is
a
that
good
the
one to
jurors
listen
and her?
to. I do have
think
one
that's
Audible
great
credit.
cross-examination for her when she testifies in this
Yeah,
matter
Rumble is something
before the
goofy with
trial
Rumble
judge
right
if
now.
the Court of Appeal sends it back.
Do you want any hearing in this matter to be public?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We want all y'all there. We miss you.
Okay, so Hill's book is called Behind the Doors of Justice, The Murdaugh Murders, which was published last month.
So along your investigations into the alleged jury misconduct, these
Here.
allegations, have you
Just released July 20th.
things that you would present in a second
Oh,
trial?
Chrissy, while I'm thinking about it, oops,
Let's not talk
copy,
about that.
Yeah, no.
paste.
If we are lucky enough to get
Let
a
me look
second
and see
trial,
if it's on Audible, because I have one Audible credit right now. And actually, I just posted on my Rumble channel, Glenn Beck's Dark Future, brand new, also released July 22nd, 2023. It's in 3 parts. There's like 4 hours, and then 4 hours, and then 8 hours. So if you want to listen to that, Glenn Beck actually reads that audiobook, and he does the best voices for like Spooky Doo, Klaus Schwab, etc. He's awesome. And then the next audiobook comes out on the 12th, which is next Tuesday, Dan Bongino's The Gift of Failure, followed by Mark Levin's new book, The Democrat Party Hates America, comes out the 19th. So those are all audiobooks coming up
What now?
on Crime Spies on Rumble. Amazon.
Work focused
The Kindle
and
version on
educated
Amazon
content
is
will be worked
$9.99. The
on.
paperback is
Anything else? No? Thank you
$19.99.
so much. Let me read this
Let me look
statement
and
here
see
real
if I
quick.
can get into Audible. Nope, my watch died. I gotta charge my watch quick, because it has to send me a code. Okay, so here comes back the commentary. I'm gonna
okay,
mute.
I got two main questions. Let's start with, Anjanette and Gigi. You guys, I think, know this clerk, Rebecca Hill. You alluded to that before. If these allegations are true, it's a really bad thing. Is this a nefarious person? I'm like, what is she like? Is this something that you can see her doing, or was it just sheer stupidity?
I know
Gigi,
Becky.
I think you should take that one.
Yeah, I know Becky well, and I do not think that this was targeted or nefarious on her part. She is a very sweet person, and I think one thing to consider, even though it doesn't excuse it, is this is a small town, and in the South, everybody knows everybody, especially in towns of this size. I think if this did happen, I don't think that she really had any ill intent, but at the same time, I do see the point of the defense attorneys. You have jurors here giving sworn affidavits saying that this happened, but as a person, you could not meet a sweeter soul than Becky Hill. So I hope that this resolves, and man, it's just a mess. It's such a mess.
But let me push back on that a little bit, Gigi, because like we used to say in the business when we would interview somebody on a murder case, hey, good people do bad things. Good people do bad things. And what I'd like to ask you about is you brought two things up. Small town,
Christy,
I heard in that
give me
press
like
conference she's an
5-10
elected
minute
official that
or
always gets me
don't buy anything
nervous.
yet, because if
anybody
it's
ever
on
watches me,
Audible,
they
that
know I'm
book,
all about the
the
appropriate
audiobook, I
process
can
when
get
you
it
have a
and I
term
can
of
upload
office,
it
so
on
you
Rumble.
can't be influenced by the court of public opinion or the small hometown viewpoint.
See, I normally
But
like
you can't
Gigi.
tell
I
me,
can't
Gigi, I mean,
stand
I'm not saying
Anjanette
you're telling me,
Levy.
but one can't tell me that a court clerk does
Oh,
not
that's
know
weird about
that going
Gigi.
into a jury room and telling them how to view the testimony of a defendant and the defense team is not wrong. It's just so she may be a sweet, beautiful human being, but she's not stupid, right?
I don't think so. But these papers are definitely pointing that this could have happened. So I'm very interested to see what comes of this. But just as a person, the person I know, very kind-hearted, and man, there's a part of me that actually feels a little bad for her right now, just because I know her. But at the same time, this is a mess. This was the biggest trial this state's ever seen, one of the biggest in the country in a very long time. And to think that we have to.
Producers, imagine having samples
Oh,
that make
shit.
you react like this.
Just a minute.
Okay.
You'd like to opine with regard to
YouTube and
your
their stupid
viewpoint of the clerk
commercials
or
during
her
a live
personality, her
broadcast.
mentality, or what she did here
Idiots.
from a personal point of view?
Well, Gigi certainly spent more time with her because Gigi was down there longer than I was. But my limited interactions with Becky Hill, she was polite to me. But we had heard some things. I mean, I had heard some things while I was down there, some rumblings. And I said earlier, I couldn't confirm those things at the time, but some of those rumblings are included in this motion that she was having conversations with the foreperson. So people do things for different reasons. If this stuff is true, and I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt, it's wrong. And I don't know why she would have done this if it's true.
Well, I mean, if
Okay,
it's true, we
Anjanette
can always go
Levy,
back to the same old
here's your
adage,
tongue
keep people
lashing.
employed, doctors,
Maybe if you were a
lawyers,
little bit
prosecutors,
unbiased when you were
judges,
covering this
all of us on
case,
TV networks, Chris is pride to
shit
come
wouldn't
comes
happen.
before the fall.
You feed the narrative. You feed the
maybe wanted
beast,
a name for
Anjanette.
herself or whatever it may be, because there is an indication in this moving
There.
papers that she was concerned.
Now you've seen
that she
me.
wanted to write that
Crime
book,
Spies
that she didn't want it to
Unleashed.
be a mistrial, telling jurors they can't smoke, telling jurors that if they don't have a verdict by 11 o'clock, they're going to have to stay in a hotel when they weren't prepared to do that. All seems like a lot of pressure tactics to me. But Chris, what I'd like to ask you is, okay, here we go. Everyone in the collective world is now blown up. The prosecutors are freaking out. The judge is just getting this landed on the desk. The defense knew about this for a while, so they're somewhat prepared. What does a judge do with regard to the process of going forward with a voir dire of these jurors? And do the jurors have to answer the judge's questions?
So it's in an interesting situation because the case is up on appeal at the South Carolina Court of Appeals. So the first step would be for the South Carolina Court of Appeals to deal with the emergency request to remand the case back to the trial court. They have the authority to do that. It seems like it would be an appropriate step to take. I anticipate that they will send the case back for this matter to be dealt with and for a full record to be made at the trial court. Then the question becomes, who's going to preside? Ordinarily, the trial judge would preside. Mr. Harpootlian at the press conference made some indication that Judge Newman might have information that would either make him a witness or that would not allow him to sit neutrally.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cough in your face.
In particular, the Facebook post and the
Guy's a sickie.
investigation allegedly done by Ms. Hill. So they would have to determine who's going to sit. Is it Judge Newman's case, or will they bring in another judge?
He should have recused himself, in my
Would
opinion.
likely be a hearing with whoever the judge is going to be, and you would get jurors who are called in. It would be quite a spectacle. Ms. Hill would be subpoenaed. She is likely going to have a lawyer by then, and I would think may very well follow the lawyer's advice. So she may not testify, and then you would hear from however.
Like she's reading the verdict like she's
This,
surprised at
Bob,
the outcome.
is a long answer.
My God,
in
these
a
people have no
situation where you have
boundaries.
external pressures on the jury, especially from an elected official or a court-sanctioned employee. There's a presumption of prejudice. So a lot of times there are things that are irregular in a trial, and the conviction is affirmed because there's a presumption that it happened correctly or that the error was somehow minor or harmless. In this situation, if these affidavits are proven in court, there should be a presumption of prejudice. Then the Attorney General's office would have to try to make the showing, if they can, that there's no way that these influences impacted the outcome of the verdict. They might not. They might say, if this stuff is true, Judge, if you find this is true and the presumption applies, then he's entitled to a new trial out of fairness. It's not probably going to be their starting point, but that may be where they are after they interview the witnesses and have a hearing.
Chris, that was an excellent breakdown. I want to drill down on a little of the nuances, and you're from that area, so you have a better feel for it. But I was going to read, and I think our audience needs to know this. In the moving papers, I presume the law is correct. It sounds pretty much like they are throughout the rest of the country. If the defendant proves the alleged contacts occurred, the prosecution bears the burden to show they were harmless. So the prosecutor has to show that they were harmless. And it goes on to further state, and they're citing a case, Ramir, where it says, in a criminal case, any private communication contact tampering directly or indirectly with a juror is deemed presumptively prejudicial. It's so by operation of law, it's not it's deemed presumptively operational, and the burden rests heavily upon the government to establish after notice and hearing to the defendant that such contact with the jurors was harmless to the defendant. And then it goes on to say the presumption is even stronger where the contact is made by a court official and that a new trial must be granted unless it clearly appears, listen to this language, Chris, that the subject matter of the communication was harmless and could not have affected the verdict. You're down in that
thank you,
area.
Chrissy, for
Like you
retweeting
said,
my.
This presumption kind of goes opposite of what we
You're
normally
the
hear.
best.
This is very anti.
I didn't even have
I
time
don't
to,
say
I don't think, to put it on
anti-prosecutor.
there.
It's very strong language to the due
Where
process.
is
rights
the
of
motions
defendant.
hearing? I'm just
And
seeing
I'd
like
you to
little
amplify
tiny
a little bit
pieces.
more. You know the territory. I think if I were a prosecutor and if these allegations were proven, I would just consent to the mistrial and to retry the case.
That they certainly will. I'll tell you my experience, whether it's DNA exonerations or others, advocates are dug into their position initially, and they've spent thousands of hours on this case, and they're going to want, I think their
Oh my
starting
God, I think I
point
found it.
will be to try to disprove the assertions made
Transcribed.
today by the defense team for Mr. Murdaugh. But over time, if they cannot disprove it and the presumption does apply, you may very well be right, Bob. They may concede that he's entitled to a new trial through, and they would go out of their way to say through no fault of their own or any of their witnesses, but a matter outside of their control that would have undermined the right to a fair trial.
Heartbreaking. I had a murder case where it's not anything like this. It was just a juror may have been influenced by somebody, and we had to have all the jurors sit down. And I just felt so bad for the family, felt bad about the conviction, but you got to do it. Otherwise, it may get reversed on appeal. So the court's got to make a record on the trial level. And it's just, you hate to be in that position. And Jeanette, what does the community think about this?
That's a good question, Bob. It's a small community. They were inundated with press, with media like Gigi and I. Chris Adams made his way down to Walterboro many times. Walterboro, where the trial was actually held, has about 5,400 people. That's the population there. So it would be really interesting to know what the community has to say about it. I do want to let you know, Bob, though, that I have reached out to the Attorney General's office, Alan Wilson's office, for comment. I'm waiting to see if they get back to me. I sent out an email a little bit ago. Also, we had heard some talk about a possible ethics complaint being filed against Becky Hill. And the ethics board got back to me today, and I want to kind of let you know what they said.
She just talks with some smirk.
And the direct quote was, "The State Ethics Commission can neither confirm nor deny the existence of a complaint." So there you have it. We don't have any confirmation that a complaint was filed, but I was also hearing from some people who are more familiar with this process than I am, that if probable cause is found in a complaint, should one be filed, then it can become public. So we're trying to run down that information that I heard over the weekend about a possible ethics complaint being filed as well. So that would be a very big deal. So we're awaiting word from the Attorney General's office to see if they're going to comment or not. And I'm checking my email right now, and so far I have not heard back.
Gigi, again, small community here. What I found interesting is that when the lawyers were talking about how this all developed, they used the term that they couldn't get anywhere. It was like a vortex or a hole, I believe may have been one of the terms they had used. But it was when a cone of silence, that's what he said. It was when the clerk wrote a book that caused the jurors to be upset, and if I'm what you can infer from what he's saying, came forward with this information. So how do you perceive, I would imagine most of the people there are kind of anti-Murdaugh, the community in general, but yeah, you have those jurors who were upset with the clerk. How do you think the community reacts to what they're hearing now, if this defense motion is to be believed?
I think this community is probably hoping this is moved somewhere else. I mean, we talked to locals the entire 6 weeks we were there. The stronghold the Murdaughs had on that area was still very evident when we were there. Nobody wanted to go on camera publicly that lived there. So I'm sure there's a bit of panic that the circus may be coming back to town if all this happens and we get a new trial. But I can guarantee you right now, they're probably not going to talk to the press because they seem to shy away from speaking out against Murdaugh when we were there. And even after verdict, after he was found guilty and we knew he would be going away, people did not want to talk. So I'm sure that community right now is full of gossip and talking. I can just imagine it. I spent several months in Walterboro independently years ago. It is very much a small town and everybody knows everybody's business. So this is all the rage today at the beauty shops and the place where you get your oil changed. I'm sure it's being talked about nonstop.
Well, clearly I'd be getting my oil changed, not in the beauty shop. It is what it is. But I know you two are going to love being going back down there if it's going to be retried. I think it'll be. Chris, I'm going to give you the last question here. Tell me about your state criminal laws in this regard. The prosecutor mind in me is kind of kicking in right now, and I'm thinking about all this. And if I were a prosecutor or a law enforcement officer, now, of course, they want the feds involved because they don't trust SLED because they are intimately involved in the investigation. But if I were, ear on the wall listening and watching, and I heard that this actually did occur, I'd want to know what training and background and experiences the court clerks get with regard to what they're to do and not to do. And I'm pretty confident there is training there. You can tell me that, question number one. Down there, would a clerk know not to do this? You're the resident expert. And if the answer to those two questions is it was done and that they knew that this wasn't right, do you guys have an official misconduct law or a public corruption law, which could be very serious in certain states like our state, where if you violate a rule or regulation or a law based on your official capacity, you can get a very severe criminal sentence for that? Thoughts?
They do have training, and I think clerks know not to speak. And to respond to Gigi's comments earlier, somebody from a small town in the South, the court officials are oftentimes people with great discretion who never violate anyone's confidences. And that's one of the reasons they're so looked up to in the communities that they serve. In the letter from the defense team to the U.S. Attorney's Office asking for a federal investigation, they cited to a federal code of of a civil rights violation against Mr. Murdaugh, which might get some chuckles in some quarters, but that was their hook to try to get it federally. It's interesting because the feds are also prosecuting Mr. Murdaugh, so it's not as if they don't have some sort of emotional tie toward viewing him as a criminal, but SLED certainly pursued and took the lead in the homicide cases that in Walterboro. So I thought it was an interesting call. There doesn't really have to be any investigation at this point. There could be a remand and there could be depositions of all 12 jurors. There could be a court hearing, whatever. Ms. Hill does need to lawyer up, though. That's critically important for her.
If proven, just real quick, I'm on a short time for. If proven, do you have an official misconduct statute in your state where if you are in performing your duties and you violate your oath with respect to them, that you can be charged? We call it official misconduct, and at least in our state, that carries a 10-year sentence with 5 years of parole ineligibility before you even consider for parole. Do you have a corresponding statute there? And if so,
I believe that we do. I'm not 100% sure on that, Bob. That's something I'll look up this afternoon.
Yeah, I would bet. I'll tell you what, I think she's in serious trouble here, but we will wait and see. Anjanette, Gigi, guys, thanks very much as always for the great work that you bring to the table. Chris, for giving us that personal perspective out there in South Carolina. These are amazing developments. I really appreciate your commentary. I'm really glad I was here today because this was a case that was very interesting to me. And as a trial lawyer, having been in this situation as a prosecutor, again, not factually the same, but somewhat with regard to having your conviction in jeopardy, it is a gut-wrenching thing. We'll have more on the Law and Crime Network on this, you can be sure. That's it for us today. Please stay tuned for our regularly scheduled program. Be well.
All right. Thank you, sir. So we're going to switch over to a couple things. For starters, let me get this guy out of my ear. I just wanted to go over a couple things. So for starters, oops, did I click on that? For starters, this, oops. Can you see? Yes, you can see. So for starters, this is the book that just got released July 20th, 2023. Before you go buy it, let me see if it's on Audible. I just have to charge my watch for a little bit to get the text message that comes through to verify my identity every time I have to log in. It just came out last month. And here's what it says. From beginning to end, here's the true story of Alex Murdaugh double murder trial from a courthouse insider who witnessed it all and more, Nancy Grace. Nancy Grace is a putz. I mean, well, she just over-dramatizes things. And I think she's kind of in the same pool as what's-her-face, Anjanette Levy, where, you know, they complain about, oh, jury misconduct, et cetera, after the fact. Well, maybe they're feeding that narrative. I think. Do you think maybe? Do you think maybe they might be feeding the narrative a little bit with their commentary? Whatever happened to just the news? Doesn't ever happen anymore. Okay, okay, so these are just reviews. Once prestigious lawyer on trial raised the low country of South Carolina. A look at the Murdaugh murders trial through the eyes of Rebecca Becky Hill, the clerk of court with 40-plus exclusive photos. Had known the Murdaugh family for decades. Well, obviously, because Alex Murdaugh was an attorney in the area or a solicitor, and his, you know, father and grandfather. Family members of Becky were involved in the moonshine conspiracy together in the 1950s, where Buster Murdaugh was later indicted and then acquitted. Of course, they got to throw that in. For years, Becky had known about the rumors of corruption and crime surrounding the Murdaugh family. These accusations came and went, nothing sticking long enough to bring a clarity or clear conviction. Well, this just goes to show you her bias. Becky had also known of good deeds done by the Murdaughs. So there was when Rudolph Murdaugh received the Order of the Palmetto, the highest honor bestowed on a civilian by the governor of Carolina. Well, they throw that in just because, I'm sure. What she didn't know was that Richard Alexander Alex Murdaugh was capable of murdering his own wife and son. Serving as the clerk of court at the time of the trial, Becky Hill was present in the courtroom in the case of the state of South Carolina versus blah, 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 and beyond. Join her on her journey as she visits the crime scene, shares heartfelt details about the judge and people involved, navigates the massive media frenzy, delves into their own family's history with the Murdaughs, and ultimately reads the guilty verdict on live television. You go, girl, Becky Hill. The verdicts that will put Alex Murdaugh away for 2 life sentences with no possibility of parole. What bullshit. Every time Nancy Grace speaks, she has to remind everyone about her fiancé that was murdered. I didn't know that. Her voice bothers me, but then, like, right now, I have, like, a really bad ragweed allergy, so now I sound like Nancy Grace, so I can't disparage her nasal voice in the month of September. Once the hard freeze comes, this will go away. I hope that she faces some serious legal trouble for what she said and did during the trial. She played a crucial part of this conviction, in my opinion. Okay, so I wanted to remind myself to Larry, the DUI guy, the Larry Foreman, the DUI plus guy. Was Becky Hill the one that you said you contacted in order to get into the gallery? I'm just asking. Because I remember you mentioning the fact that you didn't really need to stand in line, I think it was, after a couple days because you had some connections to get you in. I'm just curious if it was Becky Hill or Rebecca Becky Hill. Let me know, Larry. All right. So in the chat of both Rumble and YouTube, I can't do anything editing. The description box is right now, but I will put the link to the document. Oh, I already closed that other window. One moment. Let's see if I can find it. It's a CNN article. Here it is. Alex Murdaugh's attorney accused clerk of court of jury tampering in the motion-seeking new murder trial. Attorneys representing Alex Murdaugh, the notorious South Carolina fraudster, who was convicted earlier this year for murdering his wife and son, filed a motion with the... Oh, will this person actually read it to me? Oh my God, this new computer is fascinating. Let's listen. Well, thank you, lady. What's her name? Arya. Thank you, Arya, for reading that. Look, we have, oh my goodness, look at all of these other voices. This new computer is leaps and bounds better than my MacBook. No. Oh, you couldn't hear the lady reading? Oh no. Well, that was kind of dumb. I'll have to figure out why. You would think you would. You would think you'd be able to hear the lady reading. Okay, so for those of you who are watching, there was this nice lady reading that whole article for me. All right, well, the next thing I was going to do, so step one is either download the link I put in the comment section, or if you don't want to sign up for Scribed, DM me through X/Twitter, Truth Social, or Gab with your email address, and I will email you the PDF. I also downloaded the text version because then you can like search for keywords, etc. So I have both of those. I can email you if you do not want to sign up with Scribed. It's pretty easy. I think you just sign in with like Google or Facebook or whatever. Okay, so step one. Step two, do not buy Becky Hill's book, Kindle, or is it hardcover or is it paperback? I forget. Don't buy that until I have a chance to log into Audible. If it's in the Audible library, I do have 1 credit. I'd be happy to use that on this book. I just have to charge my watch because my watch is my phone, and I have to get a text message verifying my identity. So here is the document. It is 64 pages. Too bad the lady Ariana, or whatever her name was, can't read it for me. But this is the document here. Appellant. Okay, we're just going to get to the good stuff. To roll to the... Okay, so... Ooh, it's her new trial after discovering... Rebecca Hill instructed jurors not to be misled by evidence presented in Mr. Murdaugh's defense. I mean, isn't this like egregious abuse of power? She was an elected official. Isn't that the right word? I'm not sure. I am unsure. Let's put this on. I'd like to have a little bit of music in the background for dramatic effect. She told jurors not to be fooled by Mr. Murdaugh's testimony in his own defense. Okay, I remember specifically watching him testify and cry and the snot just oozing out of his face. To me, that was genuine emotion. He cried. The boogers flowed like a waterfall. You can't fake that. Like I said, the charges were not conspiracy to commit murder. The charges were actually, the gun is plural, because remember there was 2 guns used. The guns in his hands. This is better. Conspiracy, I might have bet. There might have been enough. There might have been enough there. Because considering the fact that he stole a bunch of money from people. Considering the fact that Paul had the boat accident which killed Mallory Beach. Tragic. Yet, if you read the documents on that and the testimony of the people that were on the boat, what's his face? Reed? No. Connor. Connor was driving the boat along with Paul. So Paul was having a fight with his girlfriend. Who's to say that, it wasn't like an accident? I mean, have you ever driven a boat? The throttle is over on the side. Maybe, the steering wheel, and then there's like the throttle. Wouldn't you just I mean, is it possible that the two of them, when one was taking the wheel, that maybe Connor stumbled back and hit the throttle and that's why the boat went fast? I mean, who knows? It's a tragic accident. It's horrible. He's, her boyfriend, I forget what his name was. I mean, my heart just breaks for him seeing him interviewed. It's just awful. So the fact that Paul was targeted and Paul's brain was, ejected from his head. I mean, couldn't it have been, like I said, vigilante justice? And Maggie just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And somewhere on my Twitter, I gotta find it, the kennel video. There's 4 voices in the kennel video. There's someone standing really close to Paul that doesn't sound like Buster. I don't know who it sounds like. And then Maggie and Alex are in the distance talking about Bubba and the chicken. Now, here's something I pondered. What is the evidence on Paul's phone? Could they have spliced together the chicken video into the kennel video? Or are we just... There is a 4th voice on that. There's 2 different copies of that video. There's a 4th voice standing really close. I'll have to... Let me put that in my notes. Crime Spies. Remember. Find. Oops. New keyboard. Fat fingers. Find 4th voice kennel video. Yeah, all the kids have been drinking. Connor admitted to driving the boat because Paul was having a big giant fight with his girlfriend. So like I said, who's to say that Connor driving the boat, Paul comes over and says, let me have it, and Connor didn't, tip back. I mean, well, maybe I haven't driven a boat in probably like 15, 16, 17 years. But it seems to me like the boat is here and you got the little, the speed thing, the throttle. Lied about being at the kennels because he knew it would make him guilty. I truly do not believe that he murdered them. No. And on top of it, remember, he was supposed to go to the house and then he had all those steps in, 3 minutes before he got in the car. There was no evidence that he rolled down the window to yeet Maggie's phone out the thing. So, in my opinion, Paul was targeted. Paul was targeted probably because of the whole Mallory thing. And they figured because of their prominence in the family, they were just going to get away with it. It was some kind of vigilante justice. Let me just say this. The prosecution did not, in my opinion, rule out that. And the defense didn't really, I guess they brought it. That was such a long trial. Oh, and remember that one guy, not Tinsley, Kinsey. He was Kinsey. I just saw him this morning on something. I think it was either because of the boat accident or somebody that Alex owed money to. Well, okay, so, God, this is just something else. So here's the thing. Alex was a liar. Alex was a thief. Alex was a cheater. I don't think Alex murdered his kid and his wife. I think Maggie was collateral damage. I think there was 2 shooters, in my opinion. They said the one gun jammed. I think there was 2 shooters. But like I said, with Paul's head exploding, you would think that there would be evidence somewhere. Just like with this Brian Koberger in Idaho. He slaughtered 4 people with a knife. And all they have is some touch DNA on a snap of a knife sheath. They better find, blood in his car, blood in his apartment, blood at his parents' house. That's all I'm going to say about that. So the amount of drugs Alex was buying is far greater than any human could possibly consume. Something does not add up. Well, didn't they have like a plane? I thought I heard they had a small plane and like people would land their plane on their property out in South Carolina. Like I said, in my opinion, when that verdict came down and it said he was guilty of first-degree premeditated murder, I didn't see it. Plus, on top of it, the kennel video, yeah, I agree. He lied. He lied about that. And he admitted, yes, I lied. Yes, I lied about that. But I did leave after I got the chicken out of Bubba's mouth. I took the ATV back to the house, took a short little nap. I mean, for all I know, who knows what he did for that short duration of time. Got up and thought, I'm going to go see my mom. Remember they had the whole thing with the rain jacket, the blue rain jacket, and then they tested it. Oh, no, there's no gunshot residue. That Alex, wrapped the guns in the rain jacket. Okay, so where is the evidence? It had to have been in the truck. It had to have been at his mom's house. It had to be somewhere in his house. All of that damage on those two people's bodies, and there was nothing? That makes zero sense. Now, they didn't test the ATV. If he would have killed them like it's, he's convicted of, and hopped on the ATV to go back to the house, which I think they established based on the, rate of speed from the kennels back to the house. They didn't test the ATV. Well, maybe they did test the ATV and there was nothing on the ATV, so they just didn't test it. Because they would know then that whole argument goes out the window. So here we're just going to say, oh, nobody tested the ATV. So feigning stupidity or incompetence. Slido, yes. And wasn't there something to do with one of the officers that was first on the scene? Something with him? Okay, let's go back to the document. He told jurors not to be fooled by his testimony in his own defense. Okay, so we already talked about this not. Frequent private conversations with the jury foreperson, a court-appointed substitution for the foreperson the jury elected for itself at the request of Miss Hill. Let's read that again. Miss Hill had frequent private conversations with the jury foreperson, a court-appointed substitution for the foreperson the jury elected for itself at the request of Miss Hill. So they had decided on who was going to be the foreperson. Miss Hill is like, no, we're going to have this person be the foreperson. So what's that connection between Miss Hill and the foreperson? How did she know that? This is so corrupt. This woman should go to jail. During the trial, Miss Hill asked jurors for their opinions about Mr. Murdaugh's guilt or innocence. Is that her business? Like they said, isn't her duty to make sure that they have food, to make any kind of accommodations for them? Like kind of an administrative assistant, if you think about like in an office. What person, make sure we got paper ordered for the printers, make sure the temperature is adequate in the courtroom, make sure there's tissues around, etc., etc. Make sure they have food, make sure they have all their needs met, make sure to be the liaison between them and the judge and the whoever. Shit. She invented a story about a Facebook post to remove a juror she believed might not vote guilty. The egg lady. So she faked this Facebook story about the husband getting drunk and going on Facebook in order to get her removed. Remember, that was like on the last day. Miss Hill pressured the jurors to reach a quick verdict, telling them from the outs. Note to self. Just a minute. Note to self. Note. Find egg lady conversation with attorneys and judge. Remember they came in from like over the weekend, and Creighton Waters or whoever it was said something like, it's come to our attention, this Facebook post, yada, 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 yada. Then she came in and she had a conversation. Like, you could hear her voice, but you couldn't see her face between Judge Newman and her. And then they decided to let her go. I can't remember if they like had her leave and then decided to let her go. And then she comes in with the rest of the jury, and then Judge Newman says, "Okay, well, we're going to let you go, and here's why." And she had brought eggs in, like hard-boiled eggs or something, in her basket. She had all her eggs in one basket. Maybe that was a sign. Maybe that was her sign saying, "I've got all my eggs in this one basket here. I'm going to vote not guilty and hang the jury." Or persuade. I mean, who knows? Okay, so the fact that whole Facebook story was fabricated, again, isn't there? I'm not an attorney. I'm an accountant. I'm a finance manager. I'm a data analyst. I'm not an attorney. But common sense, Shannon says, it's tampering. Well, it's tampering with the court's proceedings. It has to be against the law. With, like, prison. She pressured the jurors to reach a quick verdict, telling them from the outset of the deliberations it shouldn't take them long. Remember how completely shocked we were? We're like, okay, well, it's kind of late in the day. He's going to let them go for a while. They're going to order food. And it seems to me like I remember they're like, yeah, we're not going to need dinner. And then all of a sudden it's like, jury's back 3 hours later. Shocking. The corruption in the U.S. judicial system has no bounds, apparently. I mean, some of them they get right. A lot of them, they get wrong. Miss Hill did these things to secure for herself a book deal and media appearances that would not happen. Swear. That's how they launder money. That's how the Bidens, etc. launder money, is through book deals. The court is now in. Okay, wait. Sorry. Miss Hill did these things to secure media appearances not happen. There's a proven the law does not allow the court any discretion how to respond. It must grant a new trial. Statements of facts. Okay, this is 60. How many pages? Wonder if I can figure out how to get this lady to read. So, pardon the fact that 65 pages. All right. So, here's what I'm going to do. For now, I'm going to exit. And I'm going to download the whole entire thing because Rumble only caught half of it. They didn't catch any of the commentary. Well, actually, what I'll do is I'll just download the part that Rumble had some glitch. I got one of those 404-ish errors, not found something or other. And I kept trying and got it through. So there'll be this video, and then there'll be like there'll be a separate video with what was missed. This is just shocking. Shocking. But for some people, me included, it just didn't seem right. I said it all over Twitter, or X, or whatever they call it now. Like, Lady Justice was run over. Lady Justice was found naked in the middle of the street with tire track marks and robbed of her scales after this. And it just goes to show you, Poot and all those Democrats, doesn't matter what political side of the aisle you're on, I think this is a miscarriage of justice, and now we're seeing why. Holy crap. So I'm going to read this. I got to take Lily to work in like an hour and a half-ish. So I'm going to read this. And for those of you who are watching the Gareth Perseth trial, I also downloaded a video. I'm not sure if it uploaded on Rumble yet, because there was that glitch. But that trial, I forget now, I think it's the district attorney now tested positive for the Rona. So, the Rona's coming back because we have an election in 14 months. So the Gareth Perseth trial was supposed to resume today for day 4 testimony. However, they're coming back on September 11th, which is next Monday. And the judge in that case won't release the video of the testimony until the day after, the morning after, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. So I will put that up. And then I have on YouTube rescheduled day 4 testimony for September 12th at 8 a.m. Then I'm going to figure out if I can get this lady to read out loud all of this stuff. So make sure to like and subscribe if you don't mind. And let's regroup for a little bit, have a little lunchy poo, and we'll be back with you shortly. Chrissy, it's so nice to see you. I miss my sister from another mister. You should come over on Rumble. There's some great people on Rumble. Limbed Grandpa's in the chat over there. We had Patriot Polywog last night over there. Oh my God, Chrissy, you and Patriot Polywog, you will love Patriot Polywog and vice versa. So just saying. You're welcome, Chrissy. Thanks for retweeting that. I didn't even have time to send it out myself. All right, so now you're going to listen to my outro, which has got a little snark on it. And I'll be back shortly. Just going to regroup a little bit here and read the documents. So we will see you in a short while.
Please remember, we're supposed to like and follow and share and comment below to help people like me grow our channel. I do appreciate it, although I'm starting to think it's kind of bullshit.